Hello, beautiful souls. We are here for our fourth and final video and exploration into the leadership keys within the Gene Keys. And this week, in this call, we're diving into the seventh Gene Key. And I'm using Aunt May as an example of leadership through the heart. So when we look at the seventh Gene Key, the gift is guidance. And this is the type of leader who leads through their heart, the true leader whose main interest is to empower others to find their own guidance. And this type of leadership really involves this deep, active listening and this capacity to be able to empathize with the people that they are leading, and empathizing so deeply that they can actually embrace of the fears and the challenges that other people are having so that they can help others embrace their own challenges without the fear. And this is the leader that really guides the energy of the group. They often lead from behind or from the sidelines, by really creating this space for harmony within the group, but with also like in the heart of the people that are seeking guidance from them. Others often find their own answers in the presence of these type of leaders. And because this leadership is so often not on the battlefield and not actually like fully in the fights, like as we would see superheroes, they're often, like I said, on the sidelines or leading from behind. It took me a little while to really muse with this and contemplate who in the Gene Keys, who in the MCU illustrates this story arc of this seventh Gene Key. And yeah, it took me a long time. And when I first started looking at the Gene Keys connection with the MCU, there was some like I immediately saw, like all the ones that I've gone through, that was like an immediate. But I eventually landed on Aunt May for this, and this is really only based on the Far From Home. Oh no, sorry, the No Way Home, the latest Superman movie. So before I get into that, so the shadow of this seventh Gene Key is division. And this is where you think in hierarchies. And when you think in hierarchies, you really divide human beings into classes. And that could be economic, it can be based on power, it can be based on race, it can be anything that you have a ranking for each person, and you divide them into these different groups. It can also be, political groups, anything. And it's really like leadership by force. It's like more of a tyrant who rules by force and fear, and they're really driven by their fear of losing power. And they have this inability to really think collectively. So they adopt this like every man for themselves attitude. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I talk about Aunt May as well. But all of this is really channeling from this really beautiful city of virtue, which, you channel the visionary, the virtuous leader. So these are the ones who are leading our heroes, our superheroes that we see in the MCU from behind. These are the people who the heroes turn to for guidance, the ones who listen to them, who hold space for them, who, like so often, so many of the heroes within the MCU feel like they kind of like have the weight of the world on their shoulders. Like, it's their job to save the world. And, in a lot of ways, there is that pressure put on them, and they put that pressure on themselves. And then there's these characters that our heroes can be a little softer with, who they can kind of just sit with and take that weight off their shoulders just for a moment. And those moments like offer this type of leader the opportunity to really like connect with their heart and to open whoever they're guiding, to open them into their own heart. So they're, it's a really important leader, but it's one that, isn't often someone that has a lot of the glory or the like the screen time or the um they aren't front and center when we think about someone leading a kind of superhero story. So I thought of Aunt May because in Spider-Man No Way Home, there is a point in the movie where, so if you haven't seen the movie, I think I explained it briefly back in the first video. But Peter Parker wants, his identity has been revealed, and he wants Doctor Strange to do a spell to make everyone forget that they know who he is. But the spell is actually making everyone forget. The spell goes wrong, and what it does is it brings all of these people into like across the multiverse, into the timeline. And it's about like everyone who knows who Peter Parker is. So all these villains from different Spider-Man movies, from the Andrew Garfield and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, they come into our Tom Holland's Peter Parker's world. And they all kind of had the same fate in their original universe or their original world, where they basically all died through their battles with Spider-Man. I'm really simplifying this. I definitely recommend watching the movie, or if you've seen the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So then Peter basically has this choice to make whether so Doctor Strange is kind of pushing Peter to just like get rid of them, like they're fated to die, like they're meant to die. And Peter is kind of like torn between like taking that easy option, but it is his Aunt May who encourages him to see things from the perspective that, like if you can help them, then you have a duty to help them. And it is like Aunt May in that movie that has that line to Peter that, like, with this great power that you have, there is this great responsibility. And she really reminds him of his power and of his responsibility, like to the world, like because of this power that he has and this position that he has found himself in through what he's experienced in his life. And it is Aunt May who guides him and encourages him to make a better decision, or to make a different decision, to actually help these people who have been deemed by many others as these lost causes, who can't be redeemed and who can't be saved. And even though they were villains or antagonists in these other movies, like a lot of them had, they didn't set out to be a villain. They didn't set out um to be a destructive force in the world. Like a lot of them had, very unfortunate circumstances that put them in that situation, not to downplay like the choices they made with the power they found themselves having. But Aunt May really guides Peter into, like accepting his responsibility as a hero. And she holds space for him in a way that allows him to be a better leader in himself. So I think that's where I see Aunt May having that really strong gift of guidance. And I also see, when I was contemplating like the shadow of division, I don't necessarily see that in Aunt May's character, but I think it's because, Aunt May to me wasn't a full character. She was a side character that was there for the purpose of Peter Parker's character development. I don't feel like we really knew her. We didn't really know her challenges, her struggles. We didn't really get to see that side of her. So if we did, we may have seen more of the shadow of division in her story, but I don't think didn't really get to see any of her evolution. But what we did see, or what I did pick up on, was like this shadow of division within Peter. And this is sometimes something that can come up when we look at our gene keys. So we have our, shadow, gift, and city, but a part of that is that we can also bring all of those things out in other people. Like some people can be triggered into those things. We can sometimes project those things onto others, but it can also be, like our gifts, like we bring out that gift around other people, and that is part of our gift, to bring it out in other people. But the same can be said about our shadows. And like that shadow of division, not to say May necessarily brought it out, but it was definitely a theme that came up within Peter, of like this division of wanting to put, these villains that came in from these different worlds, to put them over here, like to divide that, they're not worth saving, like they're not my problem, they need to go. And like this division, and that every man for himself attitude, like Peter's like, I want to go to MIT. I want to get my life back. I don't want people to know who I am. Like, him really kind of putting himself first, and like dividing these people off as like, no, Doctor Strange can take care of him, get rid of him. but then it is through Aunt May's guidance and her capacity to hold space for Peter in a way that he can really connect back into himself, that he found that guidance to actually um, come into that more harmonious space where he was willing to find a solution to help all of these people that came into his life through um, the spell going wrong. And if you've seen the movie, you know that, of course, that goes horribly wrong because, the Green Goblin was, not on their side and he ultimately killed Aunt May. And that led Peter down his own evolution where I talked about this in the first video where he sacrificed his revenge against the person that killed Aunt May, like his only living family member, the person he was probably closest with in the world. He sacrificed his revenge against the person that killed her or that caused her death. And that led down, his evolution to then work with the other Spider-Mans and really accept his role of sacrifice to save everyone. And so we still see like that influence of guidance that Aunt May had on him. Um, yeah. So I think she's a really good example. And there are many others. I was even contemplating if like Pepper Potts, like with Tony Stark, um, had like some essence of this seventh gene key. I don't think she quite like fully fits it. But there are many others that we may view as like side characters that really hold that space for our heroes and these characters that we get to see the full journey. We see these characters that hold these softer moments for them to have to connect in with like their own guidance and to really come to the place of knowing the right thing to do by someone just holding space for them where they don't have to carry the weight of the world for one moment. So I really invite you to muse with and to contemplate who are the other like side characters that you see as having this seventh gene key encoded within their story. Like, who are the people that the MCU heroes turn to for guidance or that just hold space for them to receive guidance, even if they don't necessarily turn to them? And is there like a more prominent MCU character that you see having this seventh gene key? And if there's one that you feel like really connects it, I would love to hear that as well. For me to muse with that as well. But like I said at the beginning, the seventh gene key is really about leading through the heart, and more than that, holding the space for other people to connect with their heart for them to then lead in that way as well. So now I want you to start thinking about and start contemplating, and this can really be an ongoing thing for you. Like, what is your hero journey? What is your hero's journey? And what gene keys or what story arcs from the MCU or from any other movies that you connect with and vibe with as well? What connects you? Like, what is resonant with you, and what parts do you see in your own story? And I have some prompts here. What leadership qualities do you most admire in others? And I want you to think about the MCU characters, other characters, people in your real life. Like, what are the leadership qualities you most admire in others? And this is a really powerful question because often it is holding up a mirror to your true essence of leadership. What we admire most in others is often what we have like at our essence and at our core. Like, we're seeing ourselves, we're seeing the essence of our true leadership reflected back to us in others so that we can connect with ourselves. And sometimes when we're in the shadow, this can lead to this comparison that it's like, I'm not enough of that to be a leader. But I want you to know that if you admire something in someone else, you carry that piece within yourself. Everyone is a mirror to reflect things about yourself. So it's so powerful to think about like what you admire most in others, because I want you to know that all of those qualities are encoded deeply within you. Which MCU heroes are your favorites? And You can think about, the characters we have explored, but also other characters that I maybe haven't touched on. Like, which characters are your favorite that you just feel like, yes, like I'm always rooting for that person. I just like feel this deeper connection to that person. And you don't need a reason. Like you don't need to justify your choice. Just the ones that you really naturally feel drawn to. Like for me, it's always been, like from the beginning of the MCU, it was Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, which I know that they're fan favorites. A lot of people really love them. And because for me, they represent the 31st and the 27th gene key that have, my purpose and life's work really prominent places in my gene keys profile. I feel like they do, like I do feel that deeper connection to them through the way that they lead and even through their flaws and just seeing their evolution. Um, so something that's amazing for you to connect to as well. And you can also turn this the other way, like what characters kind of like trigger you a little bit or irk you a little bit. And it could be villains. I think that a lot of like the villains or the antagonists are really, they highlight a lot of the shadows. So sometimes seeing the shadow that they're really being driven from can be a little triggering if that is a shadow that you haven't faced in yourself, because part of you is being like, oh, I kind of relate to this horrible person. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think, some antagonists have some redemption, some do not. But if you see the shadow within one of the antagonists within the MCU, look up like what is the gift within that, and maybe that gift is something that you connect with. But just notice like who are the characters that you often connect to, and is there a theme between those characters, and what are the qualities those characters have, and how are those qualities actually reflected in you, and how can you embrace the gifts and also embrace the shadow to embrace the gift that is within them. What are your favorite things about your favorite heroes? And, it can be literally like just the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, the way, like their approach to their leadership, their approach to, like their thought process and all of that. There's so many different ways you can reflect on what are your favorite things about your favorite heroes. And when I think about kind of like this new phase of the MCU, I think a lot of characters that have been introduced, like Wanda is definitely, like one of like someone that I just love at the moment. And a lot of like the new characters that are being introduced, I feel like for a lot of them, we have for me, I haven't seen enough of their evolution to really form strong opinions about a lot of them. But there are definitely some that, like that something like a little moment happens and I really connect with the essence of that. And I'm excited to see how it continues to play out. But I hope we get like we got, for when I went through Steve Rogers, like there was so much evolution that went through the movies he was in. Like I hope we get that for more of these new characters that we're bringing in, to really get to see, what do they struggle with, what are their challenges, what is driving their evolution. And I'm excited to match story arcs to more Gene Keys. Some more prompts is I want you to, like I've mentioned, really allow everything that you reflect on to be a mirror. How do you see, like when you think about all your favorite things and all the things you find resonant with characters within the MCU, like how do you see all that within yourself? And if you haven't before, can you take a moment to let yourself see it within yourself, and then to really contemplate what are the gifts that you bring into your leadership? What are the gifts that you bring into your leadership? And even if you don't necessarily identify as a leader, can you embrace that you are a leader? You are a leader if you are here. If you are drawn to this type of content, then trust me, like you are a leader in some way. And I want you to reflect on like what type of leader are you? Or if you don't feel like anyone is necessarily following you at the moment, what type of leader do you aspire to be? What kind of qualities do you want to bring into your leadership? And what is it that you want to lead? Do you want to lead a cause? Do you want to lead people? Do you want to lead a specific group of people? Do you want to lead? What is it that you have this deep yearning to lead? It can be a really powerful thing to contemplate. And then after all of that, just musing and contemplation, you can have a look at what are the primary leadership coding, what is the primary leadership coding within your Gene Keys profile. I know that a lot of you would have come in with knowing if you had the 21st, 31st, or 7th Gene Key within your profile. So do you have like a primary leadership code? And then what are the other Gene Keys you have that enhance this approach to leadership? So if you have, for example, I'll use my profile for an example. Like I have the 31st Gene Key as my purpose. So purpose, gift of leadership. And then in my attraction sphere, I have the 49th Gene Key with that gift of revolution, and that leading the cultural revolution feeds into that purpose of leadership. But then I also have in my SQ, I have the 22nd Gene Key, like the gift of graciousness. I have like a lot of gifts like that. And I have the 25th Gene Key with the gift of the city's universal love. The gift is acceptance. So there's kind of like, I have a lot of this kind of really like fiery, like leading from the front, leading revolutions, but then it's balanced by a lot of that, softer energy that is really driven by kindness. And, I have the 27th altruism. I have a lot of Gene Keys that are a lot of gifts that are really around, kindness, graciousness, giving, generosity, but also that really fiery leadership as well. So all of my gifts like enhance all of my gifts, like it tells a full story. So I think looking at your leadership codes in isolation can be really powerful, but looking at how other gifts feed into your leadership codes paints a whole picture and is really powerful. So if you have, like, let's say you have the 21st Gene Key, and your gift, you have that, you have the 21st, and your gift is that authority that you bring into your leadership. You could have other Gene Keys, like you could have, like, let's think of an example. Like if you had like the 35th and you had that adventurous gift feeding into that 21st, like it would be different than if you had the like the 22nd with that graciousness, or if you had, even if you had the 7th and the 21st as well. Like I think that makes a really beautiful combination. So we need just to look at like the gifts you have, how do they enhance the type of leader that you are, and what full story does that paint about the leader you are and the way that you will lead in your life? Here I have a little list of some other, so this is kind of all the MCU characters that I have really deeply contemplated on which Gene Key I see in like their story arc within the MCU so far. Like we've covered a lot of them. Like we've covered Peter Parker with the 19th, we've covered Steve, Tony, T'Challa, Thor, Hulk, Sam, we covered a little bit. So we've covered a lot of them already. But I want you to, if there is a character on this list that you really connect with, like have a look at the Gene Key that I've matched their story with, and maybe muse on how you see that story reflected. And you may actually have a different opinion. You may have a different Gene Key, and like all of these characters are not just, they are multifaceted. Like there may be many Gene Keys that connect with their story, especially if they go on kind of different evolutionary arcs through the different movies that they're in. Like with Wanda and the third Gene Key, before WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness came out, like I probably wouldn't have connected that third Gene Key with her, but seeing more of her evolution, we see more of her story. And I thought, yes, like 100% this story arc is all about the third Gene Key, the shadow of chaos. She's the Scarlet Witch, chaos magic, but really it's all about innocence. It's all about returning to innocence, and that innocent love that she deeply craves. And the way of innovation in the middle there, I think there's a lot of that. I actually have a bunch of podcast episodes where I talk a little more about some of these that I haven't covered in these videos. So pretty sure I talk about Wanda. You can look it up if you want to find it. My podcast is Depths of Creation. So can you see these stories in these character arcs within the MCU? And are there any that you feel illustrate certain gene keys or aspects of them that I haven't listed? And what do these story arcs reveal about your own superpowers and about your own leadership? And can you connect with them? Like if you have some of these gene keys in your profile, see how you connect them like to your own story. And you may have different interpretations of some of these gene keys than I do, and that is okay as well. So what I want to leave you with is just for you, just this is something I always say, that the wisdom is within yourself. The revelations are within you, waiting to come out of you. So take everything that I have shared as something to muse with, to contemplate. A big part of the Gene Keys is the art of contemplation. It's about giving yourself just something simple to contemplate within your daily life, within the background of your life, and know that the insights will drop in, the revelations will come. Just give yourself the time and the space to contemplate. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to take one more quick drink. So if you want to know more about the Gene Keys, you can come and follow me at Gene Keys with Rachel. You can also connect with me at by Rachel White, both on Instagram. I would so love to hear from you. I would love to hear any comments you have about anything that has been shared across the 4 videos. I would love to see your profile and see the leadership codes within your profile. And if you want to look into having a deeper Gene Keys reading with me, or going more into your leadership codes or any other facet of your Gene Keys, definitely reach out. I would so love to chat with you. I hope you have enjoyed this exploration. Go out and enjoy more MCU movies, explore more with the Gene Keys. Stories are so powerful, and I love the whole universe that is created, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It gives so much depth, so much different characters, and so many things to play with when we look at story arcs and themes and all of these things that come out and how they're interconnected as well. Thank you so much for being here. Have such an amazing day. And I hope to connect with you and hear from you soon. Sending you so much love.